about. So permaculture is nothing more than somebody went all throughout the world and said, look at this, I see something working here and something working here and something working here, and these are the systems that work with no inputs from outside the system, that work with nature's ability to heal itself and or grow things like mad, okay? And I'm going to use these systems together to create a natural, like, you know, what happens out in the forest, but on my own property. And it's going to not just give me food, but it seems as if the more I take out of my garden or my farm, the healthier my land gets. Have you ever wondered how you can put a bunch of cows out on a field, and as they graze, the ground gets more lush every year? Well, okay, you know, what's our problem? You know, that we eat and it gets worse every year. It's because we're not doing what nature has already planned. So that's what this is all about. Let me get this going. Permaculture is a theory of ecological design which seeks to develop sustainable human settlements and agricultural systems by attempting to model them on natural ecosystems. And that's the Wikipedia definition, which is completely lame. Sustainable is like this. If you ask your wife, is our relationship sustainable? Would that make her excited? You know, what's the whole point of that, right? Sustainable means I've got this zero-sum game where whatever I put in, I kind of get back out, and you know, I put more back in, I get that amount out. It's like if I put $10 in the bank, I get $10 out. That's not wonderful. That's sustainable. Sustainable to me is always teetering on death. Because at one point, something's going to come in that sustainable wasn't ready for, and it died. Okay, so what I'm talking about is, and it's not written on here, permanent agriculture, permaculture. I'm talking about something that's regenerative, which means as I take something out, it replaces itself and gives me more. Okay, and that's a wonderful thing, and I don't even have to worry about doing anything. We're always worried about, you know, there's this big fake, you know, water shortage in the world. How can you have a water shortage with like even just the area of this roof here with water catchment? If you had a cistern capable of capturing the rainwater off this one roof during one rainstorm, you could run the whole block probably for a week or a month. I mean, you know, this is the whole block. Can you imagine putting rain capture on the entire block? Okay, that's what it's going to work. So, originally it was permanent agriculture back in the 70s when Bill Mollison and David Lundgren coined the phrase. Permanent agriculture is supposed to basically say, we have a problem with agriculture, we're trying to make it so that now whatever you do is permanent. And this is what I'm trying to explain in the title here. So it later on became permanent culture because they realized not just agriculture, but everything you do can have all these laws applied to them, and they can all become regenerative, okay? So why permanent, and is permanent sustainable? Permanence is something that is not only sustainable, but has an insurance policy on it. It's a policy that regenerates itself whenever you take something from it. We've already gone over all that. Having a system that is resilient, that has the resilience to take the change and continue moving forward. You know, I'm not used to doing it off of a slideshow because I am generally just a fly by the seat of my pants kind of presenter. So if I have to stutter a little bit, please work with me. But these are two of my friends right here, Val and Eli. Val and Eli live a couple miles this way, and they're in year 2 of a 3-year food forest project, which means, and they're on a postage stamp yard over here in, you know, Bartram area. They've got nothing special. They're growing hundreds of trees on their property. They're growing annual foods. They're growing perennial foods, perennial fruits. All these things on their yard. During the summer, you cannot see them from the street. They capture water off the street, off the house, off the rain. Everything in their yard completely sucks up water because water is worth its weight in gold. Okay? And water is what creates the whole system that makes everything work. Okay? So I've got a little note here about the Florida-friendly landscaping law that was signed by Governor Charlie Crist in 2009. Their neighbors decided to hate them because they didn't have that standard lawn like Queen Victoria had back in the 18,000s or whatever. And so basically somebody came up and said, well, we're giving you the little slip that says you need to cut everything out of this yard. After all that work, it's got to be thousands of dollars worth of plants. Now they probably got a lot of propagation, doing everything right. They went to the city and they said, wait a minute, there's this Florida-friendly landscape thing, and we have documentation as to every single species of plant on the property and why it's there. And the city said, okay, no problem, see you, bye. Oh, cool. So now I have this courage now to just basically do that. And so The front yard now has cover crops ready to go, so I can create nitrogen, got my carbon going. I've got things happening in the soil now, so I can take this dead, soil that used to just be some kind of St. Augustine grass. As a matter of fact, here's Val. Speak of the demoness. Yeah, well, hey, I got you up on the screen. Hey, come introduce yourself. Hey, could you tell us a little bit about your yard? I basically told him that you have hundreds of plants, hundreds of trees planted in your garden.
Yeah.
You're doing, you've got perennial systems in, you've got water retention, mulching.
We've done a lot of swales.
What's a swale?
It's on here.
Hey,
We'll get into that.
How are you?
I say the word. Okay. Well, first of all, it's about 1/10 of an acre at the most. It might be 1/11 of an acre. And on that acre, we have over probably 60 fruit trees. And first of all, what we did was we took cardboard free from, I got it from behind European Street. But obviously, you can get it anywhere. And and then I had 40 yards of manure, which was free at the time because they were wanting to get rid of it. Just dumped in front of our house.
There's a little bit of labor in the setup of the system, but then it's almost free sailing after a while.
And the neighbors were still fine at this point, so.
They didn't know what was coming.
They actually didn't know, and I think your mind is like, they wouldn't have piled a big pile of shit in front of their house. They're walking by, oh, it smells lovely, It didn't really smell that bad after a few days. Any lingering smell was gone. Because we put the cardboard down and spread it out, and then got a load of wood chips, and we put the wood chips on top of it. And this was just in preparation. In the back of our house is where we actually started our first keyhole garden, was right outside our back door steps.
We're going to get into all of this. The whole reason for the cardboard, the keyhole, all that, you're going to figure it out.
We were just preparing our front yard because we knew it was going to be an orchard and all gardens and everything like that. So.
See, if you walk through their yard, it's like this. I'm Val, okay? I'm not nearly as pretty. Snap. Try that. It tastes like, avocado. Snap. This tastes like an asparagus. Snap. This tastes like, and you're over here going, wow, what is all this stuff? And then you're full by the time you get to the yard, and you're thinking, oh, I see how people can feed themselves out of living off their yard. I can see this now.
And it's fun. People ask, oh, you must spend so much time. And I'm like, well, as much as I possibly can, because it's just really thrilling. It's amazing. And in our yard, you could walk in our neighbor's yard. this is to the front door, or you look across and there's a magnolia tree. But in our yard, you go like this. You literally are like this.
Follow
and
the yellow
there's
brick
flowers
road.
over here and little kids, and we play tag through all the pathways. And so it literally takes hours to get through our yard instead of 2 minutes.
So look at the picture. I mean, I was telling you about in the summer, you can barely see them in their yard, standing in the front yard or standing in the street. And no lie, I mean that looks like a cassia tree that you're standing in front of. Yeah. Cassia. And every single thing in that, I mean, there's a leguminous, nitrogen-fixing plant, great for fodder, great for mulch. Every single thing in that yard. I mean, most of it could be considered a weed. Most people would be in there with some kind of weed killer trying to kill this thing off. But they're actually using it for a specific purpose. Another nice thing about growing food in a food forest / any kind of permaculture system is no one can actually come in and say, well, very few people can actually walk up and say, oh, wow, this looks like a garden. See, I like that because that means if there's this big fake disaster and they have to take over all agriculturally zoned property, well, I never zoned my property agriculture. And even if I'm growing enough food to feed the city, they don't even know it's there. So they can't come and take it Agenda 21 style. So there's one other thing. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. All right, so the problem. Our factory farming techniques that we've used basically have caused us to lose 2 tons of organic material to the atmosphere, to wherever, per acre per year. 2 tons per acre per year. Now, if you want to talk losing carbon, okay, this is what's happening. We're losing carbon. It's getting in the atmosphere and it's causing global warming. I don't know what's warming the planet. I'm not even going to try to explain it. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. I don't even care. Okay? I don't care if it has anything to do with us. I don't care if it has to do with sunspots. That's not my problem. It's a mood issue. Point of this is that carbon is escaping from our gardens or from our farmland at the tune of 2 tons per acre per year, which means it's getting worse by, like you wouldn't believe, every year. And this is the big problem. It has nothing to do with you breathing or you driving your car or a plane. Okay, it has everything to do with our farming system, which owns us right now. We're talking Monsanto and Big Ag own us, and they're getting worse all the time. They want to own your food supply. So I'm going to get off of that. You've heard my rant. This right here is, if nobody knows about the 3 numbers that are on all these fertilizer bags, this is called NPK. Nitrogen, I always say phosphorus, but it's phosphate and potash, or potassium. But these are the 3 different things that are like the basic building blocks to grow a plant. Does this make the plant healthy? No. Does it make it good for you? These are the things that make a plant grow. Okay, it'd be like, I built a car. It's a box. It has 4 wheels and it rolls, but there's a guy in the back pushing it. That's basically what's going on here. So the problem is, this is part of a tirade that I like to go on. We basically seed our land. We plow the land. We seed it. Diesel plow, diesel seeding devices. Sometimes they're combined into the same thing. Then we water it constantly to keep the stuff from drying out. It basically grows. Then we take petroleum-based fertilizers and fungicides and herbicides and spray it all over everything so the plants live, which is a horrible lifestyle, if you ask me. Then we basically harvest with a big diesel power harvester, and then we put it in big trucks and they drag it around, and then they ship it to this plant, ship it to the processing plant, who then processes it. You've already got food that's been picked before it's truly ripe. You've got it, nutrition deficient at best from the start. It shows up at the processing plant. They chop it and they cook it and they do whatever they're going to do with it, and then they freeze it. They stick it in plastic and they put it on another truck. That truck goes over to one main place, which then disseminates it to different regions, which then disseminates it to the different customers, who then disseminate it to their different locations, who then put it on the shelf, and it sits in a freezer that's running 24/7, waiting for you to come buy it. And then you get in your car and you drive over to the car, and then you pick it up off the shelf, and then you drive it back, and then you put it in your freezer that's running 24/7, and then you finally drop it in a microwave. Is there any chance that that food is good for you? So it's toxic and deficient at best. Okay, that's my point. So this food is considered cheap. We pay the least per capita of any society in the whole wide world for our food, supposedly. Now, this is because of tax subsidies. This food is not cheap. The farmers are all whining they don't make any money, legitimately, by the way, because they don't make any money. The only money they get is the tax subsidies we pay them to stay afloat. They can never make their system better. It can only get worse. This is sustainability, where we pay them to just stay flatlined, and they can basically drop at a moment's notice. And the whole mantra forever had been, get big or get out. And get big means you get out, basically, because the big guys buy your farm, buy your farm, buy your farm. Okay, we're talking about Monsanto and the whole crowd. Basically come in and take over and take over and take over. They own your food supply and your land now. That's okay, because they're destroying the land. We don't want their land. We have land in our yards, right? So that's what we're talking about. So our health suffers while our taxes go up. Here's a solution: permaculture. A different kind of victory garden for a different kind of war.
Yeah.
What war is being waged on us right now? Okay? The only way to vote is to vote with your fork. Michael Collins said that. And to me, the only way to really vote is to vote with not paying the monster, because when you feed the monster comes and gets you. So you grow your own. And you can grow your own anywhere. You could be in an apartment. I don't want to hear anything about community gardens. It's a finite little space. It's this little thing where they kind of run you down a little canal, and you kind of do what they tell you to do, and you learn everything wrong, and then you get this minute amount of food. I don't want to know about that. All I want to know about is, how do I get everybody in the world to take a little bit of time a day and think about maybe even starting a little plot of food here, using techniques that don't require them to work on it constantly. And then they'll say, well, this is growing and I don't do anything to it, I'll just put a little plot here. Next thing you know, they got a plot of food all over the place, and they take it to their friends and their family, and they've got plots of food everywhere. Next thing you know, they're growing stuff you don't find in the grocery store. Has anybody ever asked you why you only eat tomatoes, cucumbers and zucchini and all that, and that specific variety? That's because these are the ones that were not nutritious. These are the ones that were the most productive. The ones that we can whip into shape and make it be the most productive. It has nothing to do with nutrition. None of our food system has anything to do with your health at all. I promise you. Okay, so here we are. I don't know what all that says. So, one solution. Grow your own. Here we go. Growing an organic garden is a lot of work. You have watering schedules, pests, and the expensive fertilizers that have to be put down several times a season. Now, there's the weeding. Why do you want to grow a conventional organic garden then? Now, see, here's the question. Organic farming is nothing more than a bunch of people who said, I'm going to do what I know, which is regular farming, conventional style farming, but I'm not going to use all those things they use to make their system somewhat easy, which means now I have to do everything by hand. It's a system that doesn't work. We already know that. Now I've got to go out and weed by hand. I've even got to go out and pick insects off by hand. I mean, if you've seen this crap. Yeah. So this is why your food's like 15% more expensive, and also they don't get any subsidies for growing any of this stuff, by the way. So they have to charge so much more for organic. Organic is a bare minimum standard. That food is still not grown for your nutrition. It has a tendency to be 20 to 40% more nutritious though, because they have to use things like manures and whatnot. Now, if you go down into an organic farm and you pick up the soil and you drop it and it lands on the ground like a big clump, you're in the right farm, okay? But if you do like this and the wind blows it away like it's nothing, you're in just another old farm where they're just loading it up with whatever, organic fertilizer and organic pesticides. Any pesticide is a problem, and we'll learn about that in a minute. Okay, so you want to lower your toxins and improve the nutrition and flavor of your food. You probably want to reduce your costs and feel good about lowering your carbon footprint too, whatever your reasons. I think you can do far better than organic gardening. There you go. All right, irrigation. You should try to never water your garden. I mean, it doesn't mean you never will, because you have droughts, you have some issues. If you set it up right, you really won't ever have to water your garden. But every now and again, you'll get out there, and next morning, because this is the time to know when your garden is dry. The middle of the day, even the best permaculture system, things can be wilty because the sun is just sucking the life out of everything. But the next morning at around 9 o'clock, if it's not pepped back up and going, hey, I'm ready for the day, then you've got to give it a little bit of water, because it's not probably going to come back, and that day is going to take it out. So this is some of the little things you look for. If you sit here and you water plants, and it's constantly evaporating out of the plant through the sun, it's constantly evaporating out of the soil, and you water, what happens, like say, if you had sourdough starter and you kept adding water to it because it kept drying out? It's dead. It's going to become a soupy mess. There's no nutrition in it. It's now so diluted that there's nothing good to it. That's what's going on in every one of those little fruits and vegetables you pop off this plant. It says, oh, I'm big and juicy and flavorless. Wow, flavor is nutrition, just so you know. If it doesn't taste good, it's not good for you. It's not going to be good for you. So we use techniques in permaculture that allow you to harvest your water in the ground where it belongs. So in other words, rainwater, free water. City water, Jacksonville city water is the 10th worst in the nation. We just heard a little bit about that. 10th worst in the nation, the city, not the state, the city. Okay? If you're spraying that water on your plants, yeah, most of that, like especially if it's not a fruiting plants have a tendency to be able to filter some, okay? I'd say pretty good, actually. But if you're eating lettuces and things, you're getting that water, and some of it's even radioactive. I'm not going to, I don't have a Geiger counter, but they're talking about how these radioactive particles are in the water now because they make it through the water management filtration systems. That's a bad thing. It's from all the cancer patients getting their treatments. In permaculture, our job is to keep the water on the land as long as it's possible. Obviously you don't want a stagnant pool sitting somewhere, but you want to keep that water running through your system as slowly as possible and feeding everything on the system before it finally decides to run off into a river or do whatever it's got to do. Hopefully it's not evaporating. Let's see. So the trick is mulch, and then bury wood. Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. You see all this stuff that people spent money on? They didn't need it, and it's killing their plants. or it's not making them any good. Okay, check that out. Mulch. You know it's good when you see sparkles.
Just like marketing.
And it's really good when it's fired up. That's a hugel mound. That hugel mound sits in my backyard right now. This one's been through a freeze. It's got peppers on the top of it, blowing peppers out right now. I've got tomatoes all around the outer edge of it. Lost every squash known to man. That's okay. You know, squashes are very sensitive. I've got walking stick kale and all the things that are supposed to be able to make it through freeze, of course, made it through the freeze. I've never watered this thing, except when I put it in. I put a little water in the system just to make sure it's filled up. That water comes from my water catchment system, which you don't see here, but it's made. Everything I do is based on 55-gallon barrels because I want to try to find a platform that's either free or really inexpensive, so that I can base everything I do off the same platform. It's got all the same fittings, and it's cheap and easy for people to understand. So at least if I share the information, it's not, well, for this you have to go buy that part, for this you have to go buy that part. It's like, just get a whole truckload of 55-gallon barrels and we'll build the Taj Mahal, okay? All right, so insects. In a permaculture garden, you want all the insects you can get. You work on inviting the insects into your garden. Aphids. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine wanting aphids in your garden?
No.
Okay, you don't want that many aphids in your garden. Yes?
What about fire ants? I have a property that is ridden.
Fire ants seem to be an exception, but I will tell you, I've seen where we've had fire ants in a permaculture setting, and they are no longer there. I can't explain it. So if you have fire ants, just make your soil nice and bring in the abundant stuff. There's no way to fight a fire ant other than inviting all the other insects in to balance it out. Fire ants are like, yo, I rule this place, and the minute you bring in all these other guys, they're like, yeah, you guys can have it, and they move on. So we've brought in truckloads of horse poo, which to me is like the pinnacle of manures. It's got this like equal amount of nitrogen and carbon in it. It's like it's compost ready to happen. It's just perfect. But it was loaded with fire ants, and the lady that gave it to us was just freaking out. I can't get rid of these fire ants. Dropped it right into my yard, and I've never seen a fire ant. So I don't know what to say. If you have good balance of insects, you'll never have to worry about one insect getting into an imbalance. You notice this transition, it looks like a bunch of bugs. Yeah. White flies, you know, white flies are a nightmare. The things that are supposed to kill white flies, the white flies will go kill it if there's too many of them. Yeah, you know, like, what is it, basil's supposed to dissuade white flies. Are you kidding me? They're all over the basil. So if you have a good balance of insects, you'll never have to worry about any one insect getting into an imbalance. The carnivorous insects eat the herbivorous insects for you. If you spray the herbivorous insects, we're talking about life cycles, and we're talking about reproduction cycles. They're totally different. The ones that eat your plants have a different life cycle as the ones that eat them, the carnivorous ones. And if you kill off the herbivorous ones, think about if I went out in the woods and I killed off all the deer. The one lion that was out there managing the flock, I killed the lion too. It's going to take a long time for that lion to come back, but you'll have deer there tomorrow. Okay, you get what I'm saying? This is the same thing here. So it's a balance of herbivores versus their predators. Okay. So let's start on this one. If you spray for the herbivorous insects, you kill the carnivorous insects too. The herbivorous insects come back sooner, they decimate your garden and leave because it's done. Or you go out and spray it again and it doesn't matter, they'll be back. The herbivorous insects come back sooner, decimate your garden and leave. The carnivorous insects, once they come back, find little to eat and leave too. Now you are in an endless loop of spraying and spraying and spraying, and this has to stop. So once you start spraying, you either have to sacrifice your garden waiting for the carnivorous ones to come back. See, nobody wants to do that. Or you have to spray, 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 and keep spraying. So the trick is to never spray. And I mean never, not even organic sprays. BT, none of that. If you're wiping out anything, diatomaceous earth, you're wiping everything out. And these things are in a balance. They cannot be wiped out. So now we've got potato bugs, or potato, let's see, a kind of beetle that likes to eat leaves. And we've got a cabbage borer. And so what do? We spray, of course. No, I should have a sound effect here. What we do, sparkles, you know that's good. Okay, we invite in the carnivorous, this is called a parasitic wash. Thank you. And ladybugs, who'd have thought? Now what's interesting, just I want to share this with you. If you even if you don't like sunflowers and you do have an aphid issue, you plant sunflowers, you know, every so often in your garden, and the ladybugs will actually come and herd the aphids up the sunflower. The aphids can't hurt the sunflower, but the ladybugs just dine on them at their leisure. And they stay out of your garden. I've never personally seen it, but this is what I understand. So, all right, so you have to have this good balance of insects. That's all there is to it. Flames, it has to be an awesome thing. Or you hire the professionals. I had to put a picture of a baby kitty in here. To go and inspect your plants and eat all the bugs off of it. Fertilizers. So fertilizers are generally just toxic sludge. They carry the building blocks to grow plants that even if they're marked organic. But here's the problem with these things. They've actually found untreated human sewage in organic fertilizers. And I'm not going to name any particular company. Okay? I wouldn't name those guys, but I will tell you, if you get out online and you do a lot of research on packaged fertilizers, no one has anything good to say about most of them. Because if the price is right, it's going to be garbage, and that's all there is to it. So if it's really expensive, that doesn't necessarily make it good. It just means, hey, if we make it really expensive, they'll believe we're better, and it's not. So the trick is we have to make our own fertilizer. So compost is generally considered to be a nice fertilizer. I look at it like this. Out in the woods where everything's working all the time, no matter what kind of drought's going on, that's compost. There's nobody out there with some kind of fertilizer. Fertilizer is a concentration of materials that I've put together so I can really jumpstart a plant or something. I'm not saying fertilizers are bad, but I'm saying compost is better. It's more stable, it's more long-term. Okay, so if you need an even bigger boost, then we need to create compost teas from many different sources. So let's talk about a few. We've got comfrey tea. This is one that Val and Eli do a lot of times. I've seen it over at their place. I never realized how good comfrey was, and I got my first comfrey plant from them. And they just reached into the ground and popped off a piece of the root, buried it back, and handed me the root. And I took it home and put it in the ground, and okay, now I've got this great big comfrey plant. And then I realized, wow, the chickens eat it, and they love it. Okay, wow, I can just put this in a little bit of water and mash it up at the bottom, and then it becomes fertilizer. Then I started doing read-ups on it. It's a bioaccumulator of so many nutrients that you just won't even be able to like memorize the list. It's got so much stuff on it.
What was it called again?
Comfrey, C-O-M-F-R-E-Y. It has a root that goes way down into the ground and it pulls up all kinds of minerals. It's got the ability to just suck in all kinds of stuff right out of the atmosphere. It's an awesome plant. Borage is another one. Borage makes these beautiful little blue flowers. Both comfrey and borage are good for us as tea, as medicinal teas. The chickens love borage, eat it like it's going out of style.
It's like a multivitamin.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to lose your comfrey and your borage, let your chickens at it. They will take it to the ground in no time. Yeah, so they love that stuff. Then we're talking about permaculture tea, which is basically worms. There's a bunch of different worm-like creatures that you can employ to make this happen. Manure teas. I might even have a little illustration on here about how to make manure teas. It's pretty neat. But here's compost, beautiful pile of compost. We'll get into all these other teas a little bit here. Here's comfrey. Bugs like it too. You see how the bugs have actually taken a little bit off? But the bugs are managed. They don't decimate my plant. They take a little bit off of a branch and then something comes and gets them, you know? There's a borage right there.
That's edible plant too. You can eat the leaves.
Oh yeah, you can eat all this stuff, yeah. They warn you about silica levels in some of these things. But that's, you know, you make a tea out of it. You don't drink it every day. It's very medicinal. You're not hurting yourself.
Good for broken bones.
I've heard, they call it bone knit. Comfrey, you put it right on a broken bone and it'll heal it like that. So no, trust me, you get into reading about these things and you'll start saying, why don't we have t-shirts that say, comfrey is my freaking best friend, you know? And you're walking around, oh, hey, you got a comfrey shirt, you know? There's yarrow. Yarrow is another one of these things. All these things, you get yarrow, comfrey, borage, and tansy, and things like that. Break off a few leaves, throw them in your compost, and they activate the compost. They make it happen faster. And they also put a lot of nutrition in that compost. All right, so here's a vermiculture, 55-gallon barrel. I bet you've never seen one of those before. I just basically made a little cradle. I stuck the barrel in there. I can just pull the barrel out anytime I want. I used another piece of a barrel that somebody had cut in half, and I just sort of cut a slot in the back, and I cut the thing so it goes down, and that goes in the slot, and it comes forward, so there's no real hinge on it. You could do anything for the front there. I got these little metal loops. You know, they're called pipe clasps. put a pipe clasp in there so that if I wanted to, through those holes, I could put a nail in there. Because something we have in Riverside is called rats, and they love worms. They will eat